Have you ever witnessed an entire school change because one girl dared to stand up to a bully? At Maplewood High, Naomi Brooks, the new black transfer student, quietly stepped into the crowded hallway. She only wished for a peaceful life unnoticed by anyone. But Savannah Reed, the queen of the school, chose Naomi as her target to assert power. From mocking words in the cafeteria to public challenges behind the gym, the whole school waited for Naomi to break, yet they had no idea Naomi carried within her a strength forged through years of training, along with an iron will never to let anyone diminish her dignity. Before we begin, let us know where you're watching this video from, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe to join us for thrilling and inspiring stories where justice and courage always triumph over fear. Let's dive into Naomi's journey as she faces the bully and changes Maplewood High forever. The yellow school bus hissed softly at the front gate, dropping off groups of noisy students. Naomi Brooks was the last one to step down. She gripped the straps of her backpack as passing eyes slid over her, measuring curious. Naomi was used to that feeling after years of constant school transfers throughout her childhood in Chicago. Walk lightly, speak softly, don't draw attention, don't leave a trace. She lifted her gaze to the red brick building of Maplewood High, its gray glass windows and crowded hallways. Nothing new, nothing surprising, just another place to survive her senior year in peace. Naomi slipped along with the crowd inside, avoiding shoulder brushes, avoiding direct stares. The air carried the scent of new books mingled with freshly mopped floors. Pale blue lockers lined the hallway, posters for the upcoming football game taped on the walls, while bursts of laughter broke into scattered clusters like foamy waves. Naomi stopped at locker row 2B, pulled out the slip with her combination code, and muttered the numbers to herself to memorize them. She only wanted stability. Just enough peace to graduate and move on. But stability in high school was never something you decided for yourself. The atmosphere around Naomi shifted in a very specific way. Loud conversations lowered groups of friends, subtly parted as if making way for someone important. Naomi didn't turn, but instinct told her she knew exactly who was coming. Stepping into the cleared space was Savannah Reed, blonde hair falling in soft waves over a pricey plaid dress, hugging her 18-year-old frame. Savannah didn't need to shout to be noticed. Her walk already declared it confident to the point of challenge. Flanking her were Tessa Cole, red hair, sharp eyes cataloging every possible threat, and Jenna Park, brown hair, quiet but always listening to gather intel. At the end of the hallway, leaning against the wall in his bright Honor 12 jersey, stood Brandon Reed, Savannah's brother, the football star. Beside Brandon was Tyler Diaz, wiry but quick, the kind who always enjoyed trouble for sport. Savannah paused, giving Naomi only the briefest glance, cold enough to set an invisible boundary. Naomi immediately understood the message. She was the new girl, and the order here already had an owner. She lowered her head, turned her locker's dial, deliberately choosing not to respond. But inside her chest, discomfort grew heavy like a stone in her pocket. Naomi had passed through enough towns to know silence could be a shield, but sometimes silence was exactly what provoked those who craved attention. First period, Naomi chose a seat by the window tucked out of sight. She opened her notebook, writing her first lines in silence. From time to time, she felt Savannah's gaze slide over, calm, calculating, like arranging a chessboard with Naomi cast as a pawn. To the left, Tessa leaned in to whisper. To the right, Jenna typed something on her phone, smirking faintly. When the bell rang, Naomi gathered her notes and walked into the hallway. Whispers bubbled around her. That's the girl from Chicago. Her style is so weird. Looks so cold, bet she's hard to approach. Naomi recognized those sharp little blades, not stabbing outright, just grazing the skin enough to sting. She tightened her grip on her pen, measuring her breath. Lunch hour. The cafeteria spread out like a stage. At the center sat Savannah's table, the place everyone could see, everyone pretended not to look at. Naomi chose the farthest corner table, the one nobody liked, because it was too far back and known as the uninvited table. She unscrewed her milk carton, slid her tray forward, and tried to fade into the background. But today was not going to be peaceful. With a subtle tilt of her head, Savannah signaled Tessa and Jenna to rise. She herself picked up a red juice cup and strolled after them. Around the room, phones quietly lifted, a few at first, then more. Naomi heard approaching footsteps, looked up, and met Savannah's challenging eyes. The cafeteria fell so silent Naomi could hear her own heartbeat. Savannah leaned down, lips curved into a smile polite enough to be mocking. "Sitting way back here so you won't be lonely," Tessa snickered. Jenna chuckled, her laugh sharp like glass-tapping porcelain. The usual response was embarrassment, confusion, or anger. Naomi chose none of them. She looked straight at Savannah, her eyes calm as a winter lake. "I like the quiet." Savannah shrugged, smile intact. "Oh, that's a shame." The juice tilted accidentally. Red liquid spilled, seeping across Naomi's tray, soaking the bread dripping onto the table. A few muffled gasps. Someone stifled a laugh. Someone else started recording. Naomi didn't leap up or shout. She set her spoon down, lifted the stained tray, and calmly walked to the trash. Each move precise, economical, as if rehearsed 100 times. She dropped the tray, wiped her hands with a napkin, and returned. Only then did she look at Savannah again. No anger, no fear, just a steady composure that left the room unsettled, unsure how to react. For a moment, an odd silence opened. Laughter died. Phones lowered slowly. Naomi slung her backpack on, and before leaving, she asked, "Finished yet?" Savannah froze briefly. A flicker crossed her perfect face, not shame, not rage, but surprise. The script had slipped. Naomi walked out of the cafeteria, leaving behind eyes that for the first time didn't know whose side to choose. Afternoon gym class. The grass field gleamed damp after watering. Brandon warmed up, joking with Tyler, sneaking glances at Naomi, tying her shoes at the far edge. When the coach signaled the warm-up run, Brandon shifted pace on purpose, cutting across Naomi's path. Tyler accidentally bumped her shoulder each pass. Contact strong enough to break rhythm, but not enough to draw penalties. Naomi kept her breath steady, shortened strides, adjusted her balance, sidestepped in subtle angles, moving like pieces on a chessboard with minimal strokes. No retaliatory glance, no complaint, just steady running. A cluster of students watching whispered, "She doesn't react at all." So calm, Savannah stood at the sideline, arms folded, her smile thinned. What was supposed to happen hadn't. Naomi's silence, which Savannah equated with weakness, suddenly reflected back as Savannah's own impatience. Class ended. Naomi grabbed her backpack, walking down the rain-damp hallway. On her locker door was a neat note in black marker, "After school behind the gym. If you don't want to be called a coward." SR. Naomi peeled it off, folded it into quarters, tucked it into her pocket. Around her, small groups of students pretended to chat, but kept their eyes on her. At the end of the hallway appeared Savannah with Tessa, Jenna, Brandon, and Tyler. She didn't speak first, just looked at Naomi, waiting. Naomi lifted her head this time, not avoiding. Their eyes locked, a taut cord stretched silent between them. Savannah's lips curved. "Don't be late." Naomi gave a slight nod. "I'll be there." The answer dropped like a coin onto tile. Whispers cut off. Savannah turned, but her stride lacked the ease she had when she arrived. Naomi shut her locker fingers, brushing the cold metal. Somewhere in her memory, her father's voice, Marcus Brooks, former fighter, sidelined by injury, echoed deep and firm, "You don't start the fight. But if it comes, you finish it with absolute control." Naomi drew a long breath. Outside, the sky was lead gray. Her first day had already felt endless, but the real test still lay ahead. And this time she knew Silence would not be the whole answer. That afternoon, the sky over Maplewood was a thick, heavy gray, as if nature itself sensed something was about to happen. When the dismissal bell rang, students poured into the halls like a bursting flood. But instead of dispersing quickly, a large number drifted together in one direction, the athletic field behind the gym. News of the showdown between Naomi Brooks and Savannah Reed had spread faster than any morning gossip. Naomi walked steadily down the long hallway. Her footsteps tapped against the tile like drum beats. In her backpack were only a notebook and a water bottle, yet her shoulders felt heavy. Heavy not from the items, but from the weight of hundreds of eyes pressing in on her, from both sides of the hall, full of curiosity and expectation. Outside wind swept through the trees, carrying with it the earthy smell of dust. More than 20 students had already gathered, forming an unofficial circle. Whispers and snickers mixed with the sound of phones clicking into video mode. At the center stood Savannah, arms crossed, posture regal like a queen about to pass judgment. Behind her were Tessa and Jenna, the usual attendants. Brandon Reed and Tyler Diaz were also present, shoulder to shoulder, radiating challenge. Naomi walked forward slowly, her eyes neither lowered nor boastful. As she stepped into the circle, the air thickened. Every breath of the crowd grew short and quick. Waiting for the spark, Savannah arched her brow, lips curling into a half smile. "I thought you'd run away like a scared little mouse." A few scattered laughs rose from the outer ring. Naomi didn't flinch, only looked straight at Savannah. Her voice was calm. "Even I said I'd come, and I keep my word." The confidence in her answer caused the atmosphere to dip for a moment. Savannah was briefly surprised, but quickly regained her arrogance. She turned to the crowd, raising her voice, trying to pull them into laughter. "Did you hear that she thinks she can stand on my level?" Savannah gave a signal. Brandon stepped forward first. His football player frame towered, shoulders broad like a wall, lips curled in a mocking grin. He didn't speak, just lunged at Naomi, intent on shoving her onto the grass, a trick he'd mastered on the field. But Naomi didn't waver. As Brandon reached out, she pivoted to the right wrist, snapping with speed. In a heartbeat, she used his own momentum, dragging him off balance. A dry thud cracked the air as the giant dropped hard to the ground. The crowd held its breath. Brandon's eyes bulged, disbelief etched on his face. He had been thrown down so easily. Before he could rise, Tyler shouted, "Let me take her." He charged like an arrow, fist raised. Naomi sidestepped, hips turning fluidly. She caught his arm, twisted it sharply behind his back. Tyler's cry of pain rang out, forcing him to his knees. Naomi held firm, but didn't overdo it, just enough for him to know resistance was pointless. Seconds later, she released him. Tyler, crumpled face flushed with pain and humiliation. The entire field fell silent. No laughter remained, only stunned whispers. He went down. What did Naomi just do? Phones still recorded, but hands holding them trembled. Savannah froze, face pale. For a fleeting moment, she saw her throne of power, built over years, begin to crumble. But instead of retreating, her pride and wounded ego shoved her forward. With a scream, Savannah lunged at Naomi from behind, desperate to reclaim control. Naomi, trained by her father to always stay alert, reacted instantly. She spun, caught Savannah's wrist, and yanked her off balance. In a single move, Savannah staggered, nearly falling face first into the grass. Naomi steadied her just in time, leaving Savannah upright but completely restrained. Naomi leaned close, voice low and clear. "You were never strong, and you will never control me." Savannah stiffened. Her wide eyes reflected the bitter truth. Around them, the crowd whispered, then fell silent. Naomi released her, letting Savannah stumble backward. Tessa and Jenna, usually loyal, faltered, too shaken to step in. Brandon, having pushed himself up, only lowered his head in silence. Tyler rubbed his aching arm, avoiding every gaze. In the circle's center, only Naomi stood tall, her breath steady, her eyes blazing in the dim afternoon light. The whispers spread like ripples. Savannah lost. Naomi's the strong one. I've never seen anyone so calm. For the first time, talk no longer revolved around Savannah's dominance, but around newfound respect for Naomi. Savannah trembled, tears brimming at the edges of her eyes, but she swallowed them back, refusing to let anyone see her cry. Still, it was already clear the image of the Iron Queen had shattered. She turned and walked away briskly, almost running, leaving behind a heavy silence. Those who once laughed along could only stare after her. None dared shield her now. Naomi drew a deep breath, lifting her face. She didn't smile, didn't gloat, only exhaled quietly. She hadn't sought to be a leader, nor to stand out. But Naomi knew this fight had ended a long chain of bullying, and she had lived up to her father's teaching: never start the fight, but always be the one to finish it. As Naomi stepped out of the circle, the crowd parted to make way. Phone's lowered eyes followed with newfound respect. She walked on serenity in every step. Overhead, the heavy gray sky lightened as if Maplewood High itself had changed after that afternoon. Naomi knew tomorrow would not be the same, but at least she had proven true strength is not found in violence, but in calm and in the power to control oneself. The following morning, early autumn sunlight streamed through the tall glass windows, casting a pale glow along the halls of Maplewood High. But the atmosphere was completely different. Whispers no longer circled around football games or upcoming exams, but around a single name: Naomi Brooks. The entire school had heard. Short clips from the afternoon before had spread across group chats, replayed with astonished looks and bursts of unbelievable. In them, Naomi, the quiet, reserved black transfer student, had thrown Brandon Reed to the ground, locked Tyler Diaz, and stopped Savannah Reed's sneak attack with chilling composure. Naomi walked into the hallway with the same ordinary demeanor. Backpack, strapped hair tied back neatly, eyes forward, neither hurried nor slow. But everything around her had shifted. Students who once whispered behind her now avoided her gaze. Some even gave small nods of acknowledgement. Curious, mocking stares had transformed into a mixture of respect and intrigue. She knew she had become the center of a story she never wanted, but Naomi didn't carry herself with triumph. She only wanted to follow her father's advice: never start the fight, but always finish it. Across the hall appeared Savannah Reed, but she was no longer Maplewood's queen. Her steps dragged, her shoulders hunched slightly, her eyes downcast. No crowd surrounded her, no chorus of laughter echoed in her wake. Tessa and Jenna, once her shadows, walked past without pausing, murmuring only to each other, leaving Savannah exposed under everyone's gaze. Brandon, Savannah's brother, didn't come close either. He stood at the corner, eyes lowered, face heavy with disappointment and unease. Tyler was nowhere to be seen, too ashamed to show up that morning. Savannah bit her lip hard, forcing herself to walk through the corridor under dozens of eyes. But she still caught the whispers behind her. Savannah really lost. I never thought I'd see the day. Naomi witnessed it. For a moment she remembered herself back in Chicago 2 years ago, when she lost control, landed a classmate in the hospital, and was shunned by an entire school. That feeling of the world turning its back, Naomi knew it in every breath, and now she saw the same weight crushing Savannah. But Naomi felt no joy. Her eyes carried no triumph. She only sighed softly, then continued walking, because she knew power built on fear collapses just as quickly. At lunch, Maplewood's cafeteria became another stage. Naomi still sat at her familiar corner, the far-away table, but today attention shifted elsewhere to Savannah's table. Once crowded with those eager to be near her, it now sat empty. Savannah sat alone, tray untouched, before her eyes glazed downward. Around her, other tables buzzed with chatter and laughter, but the invisible ring around Savannah was stark a silence no one dared to cross, and that silence to her was harsher than ridicule. Naomi lifted her head and saw it. Her heart sank. She knew too well how isolation could break someone faster than blows. Naomi stood carrying her tray and walked toward Savannah's empty table. The cafeteria hushed instantly, every eye fixed on the two girls. Savannah looked up, eyes wide with surprise. Her lips trembled as if to speak, but no words formed. Naomi set her tray down and sat across from her. Her voice was calm but clear enough for all to hear. "It's over now. I don't want to continue this pointless game. I hope you don't either." Savannah froze. The words carried no threat, no arrogance. They sounded like both a verdict and an escape. The cafeteria stayed silent. No laughter, no mockery, just taut stillness. Naomi said nothing more. She stood, lifted her tray, and returned to her usual table. Her steps were light yet decisive. The crowd watched every movement, and then, like a ripple spreading, the atmosphere shifted. Whispers rose again, but this time about Naomi's composure and dignity. Savannah remained seated, heart heavy. Tears welled, but she forced them back, for she knew in that very moment the image of the Iron Queen she had clung to had collapsed completely, and Naomi, who never sought the throne, had unintentionally become the new symbol. That day, Maplewood High changed. There was no more laughter at someone simply for being different, no more complicit silence in the face of bullying. Everyone had witnessed the truth. Strength doesn't come from controlling or humiliating others, but from controlling yourself. Through calmness and compassion, Naomi proved it. And from that day forward, Maplewood High would never be the same again. That afternoon, when the final bell rang, Naomi Brooks walked out of Maplewood High with a heavy heart. She didn't turn back to hear the whispers or care about the stares that were equal parts respect and curiosity. Instead, she headed straight down the narrow street toward the modest rental house at the end of the block. The late-day wind stirred up dust and rustling leaves, leaving her mind even more restless. When the wooden door closed behind her, Naomi dropped her backpack onto the worn-out sofa and sank into it, covering her face with her hands. The tension she had forced down all day pressed hard against her chest. Images from behind the gym replayed in fragments. Brandon crashing onto the grass, Tyler groaning under her locked hold, Savannah trembling with her wrist pinned. Naomi felt no satisfaction. Instead, an old fear flooded back. 2 years earlier in Chicago, Naomi had lost control. A girl named Erica had taunted and provoked her, relentlessly pushing Naomi past her limit. In a flash of anger, Naomi struck back using techniques her father had taught her, but that time she didn't hold back. Erica ended up hospitalized with serious injuries. Rumors spread. Naomi was met with eyes that held both fear and hatred. In the end, her father had no choice but to transfer her to another school to start over. That memory haunted Naomi, a vow etched deep inside, never again. Now at Maplewood High, Naomi felt that past returning, demanding she face it. The sound of the front door opening pulled Naomi out of her thoughts. Marcus Brooks, her father, stepped inside. He still wore his faded track jacket, carrying the scent of sweat and wood from the small training room he maintained. He had once been a promising fighter, but an injury ended his career before it began. Since then, he had poured all his experience into teaching Naomi not to make her a champion, but to give her control. He set down his bag, saw the tired look on his daughter's face, and sat beside her. His voice was deep but gentle. "What happened at school today?" Naomi slowly lowered her hands. Her eyes were red, her voice a whisper. I had to face them. Savannah, Brandon, Tyler. The whole school was watching. I did everything I could to stay calm, but I'm scared. I'm scared I'll lose control again like in Chicago. Marcus was silent for a long moment. his face tightening. He knew this fear had followed her for 2 years. He placed a hand on her shoulder, his tone firm but filled with love. "Naomi, you're not the same as before. This time you controlled yourself. You didn't seriously hurt anyone. You only showed them you wouldn't be humiliated. That wasn't losing control, that was strength." Naomi bowed her head, tears falling onto her hands. "But what if it keeps happening? What if they don't stop? I'm scared one day I'll explode again and do something terrible." Marcus shook his head, his eyes steady in the warm yellow light of the living room. "You don't understand yet. Martial arts isn't about starting fights. But when pushed to the edge, you must be the one to end it. End it with control, with a conscious choice. I didn't train you to hurt people. I trained you so you'd know when to stand up and how to do it without losing yourself." Naomi fell silent. She remembered that afternoon, the look on everyone's faces when she controlled Brandon and Tyler. She didn't feel pride, but she didn't feel regret either. She realized, just as her father said, she had been in control. No one went to the hospital this time. No one saw her as a monster. Marcus gave her shoulder a gentle squeeze. "Naomi, real strength isn't in the punch. It's in knowing when to stop. And today, you proved you can do that." Naomi lifted her eyes, still wet but clearer now. "But they won't stop, Dad. Savannah, she'll find another way. I can feel it. This game isn't over." Marcus sighed, softly nodding. "Maybe so, but you're not alone. And you must remember you don't need to run anymore. If tomorrow or next week they come at you again, you already know what to do. You don't start it, but you finish it. That's the way to live by what I've taught you." Naomi leaned her head against his shoulder. In that moment she felt peace. Maplewood High might be a hidden battlefield, but here in their small home, she still had a steady anchor. Marcus had lost his career because he couldn't control an injury, and he refused to let his daughter lose her future because she couldn't control her fear. Naomi whispered softly, "I'll try. I won't let the past repeat itself." Marcus smiled gently, brushing her hair back. "I believe in you. You're stronger than you think." That night, lying in bed, Naomi stared at the ceiling as the glow of the streetlight streaked across her wall. Her father's words echoed in her mind. "You don't start it, but you finish it. With control." She knew tomorrow wouldn't be easy. Savannah Reed wouldn't let go. Maplewood High was watching like a stage where every move was recorded. But Naomi also knew she was ready. Not ready to fight, but ready to hold on to herself. Outside, the night wind stirred the trees. Naomi closed her eyes, inhaling deeply. The real battle might not be over, but inside her, a new calm had taken root. And this time she was no longer just the quiet girl from Chicago. She was Naomi Brooks, the one who understood that true strength lies in self-control. The next morning, as Naomi Brooks stepped into the hallway of Maplewood High, she immediately sensed the unusual air. Eyes locked onto her, hurried whispers cut off as she walked past. It was no longer mockery as on her first day, but a taut anticipation. Naomi quickly understood this wasn't over. At her locker, neatly taped to the pale blue door, was a note. The handwriting was jagged, but the challenge was clear. "After school, behind the gym. If you don't show, the whole school will know you're just a coward." S.R. Naomi plucked the note off, folded it, and slid it into her pocket. Her face revealed nothing, though her heartbeat quickened. Around her, groups of students pretended to chat, but their eyes trailed every one of her movements. When Naomi turned, she met Savannah Reed, striding from the end of the hall. Savannah wore a dark red plaid dress, heels clicking sharply against the tiles. On either side flanked Tessa and Jenna, with Brandon and Tyler just behind. Students scattered, making way. Savannah stopped directly before Naomi, lips curling in a taunting smile. "I hope you'll show up. I'm sick of your fake toughness." Tessa burst into laughter. Jenna followed. Brandon crossed his arms with arrogant ease. Tyler grinned, savoring the thought of Naomi's humiliation. Naomi didn't avert her gaze. She looked Savannah straight in the eyes, her voice calm yet firm. "I'll be there." The words dropped like stone into still water, silencing the hallway. Whispers cut off breaths held. Savannah blinked, caught off guard, but quickly masked it with a mocking grin. "Good. Don't disappoint me, Naomi." She turned on her heel, leading her entourage away, leaving behind a wake of tense stares. As her figure disappeared, chatter erupted. "Naomi's really going to fight Savannah behind the gym this afternoon. It's going to be huge." Naomi shut her locker, inhaling deeply. Her father's words echoed, "You don't start it, but you finish it." Throughout the morning, Naomi felt the shift keenly. In class, whispers buzzed about the impending clash. Some eyes flicked toward her with worry, others gleamed with excitement as if awaiting a show. Still, Naomi sat straight, filling her notebook with neat lines, her face expressionless. At recess, a thin boy leaned toward her desk, whispering, "Naomi, are you sure Savannah and Brandon? They're not easy." Naomi lifted her head, her tone even, "I'm not looking for them, but if they start, I'll finish." The boy fell silent, eyes caught between fear and admiration, before retreating. By lunchtime, the cafeteria pulsed like an arena about to open. Everyone buzzed about the afternoon. At the center sat Savannah, laughing loudly with her group broadcasting victory in advance. Every word was pitched to carry, "This afternoon that girl will finally learn her place." Naomi heard every syllable but didn't turn. She remained in her corner seat, eating quietly. Still, every eye measured her reaction. Her calmness more than anything made the air heavier. The afternoon dragged on. Every tick of the clock seemed to stretch. Naomi wrote, but her mind wandered to the field behind the gym. Her father's voice returned. So did Chicago, the memory of what losing control had cost her, and she knew everything now funneled into one point. When the final bell rang, the hallways erupted. Students spilled out, but instead of dispersing, they streamed as one toward the back of the gym. Phones lifted, cameras armed. Anticipation crackled like static. Naomi rose, gripping her backpack straps. Her stride did not falter, though her heartbeat pounded like war drums. Each step down the long hallway landed like a call to battle. By the time Naomi reached the gym field, a circle of students had already formed. At the center stood Savannah, her eyes glowing with triumph, as though victory was already hers. Behind her loomed Tessa, Jenna, Brandon, and Tyler, their stance forming a wall of familiar power. As Naomi stepped into the circle, silence fell. Not a breath dared break it. Only two gazes collided, one cold, one haughty. Savannah's voice rang out sharp and clear. "Today I'll teach you a lesson you'll never forget." Naomi did not lower her eyes. Her tone was calm but edged like steel. "You'll regret this, Savannah." The circle erupted with roars, phones shooting high, every lens poised. And then, in the suffocating tension, the showdown all of Maplewood High had been waiting for finally began. The moment Naomi Brooks faced Savannah Reed, in the back lot of Maplewood High, the circle of students tightened. Even the wind seemed to still through the trees, making room for the heavy silence pressing down on everyone. Savannah's cold smile radiated arrogance, though unease stirred beneath the surface. To cover it, she shot a glance at Brandon, her brother, and Tyler Diaz. Brandon gave a sharp nod, lips twisting into a smirk, then stepped forward. Brandon was massive, shoulders like a fortress wall. He was Maplewood's football pride, the star no one had ever toppled. He believed one hard shove would drop Naomi into the grass like all the others. "I'll end this quick," Brandon said, voice dripping with confidence. He lunged strides wide, his large hand reaching to slam Naomi down. But Naomi didn't panic. In a heartbeat, her body flowed like water, slipping to the right, seizing Brandon's wrist and turning his own momentum against him. A sharp thud cracked the air as Brandon crashed onto the grass. The crowd gasped in unison. They had never seen their football star fall so fast. Brandon's eyes widened in disbelief as he scrambled to sit up. Naomi stood firm, breath steady, gaze cold. She didn't need words, her actions spoke louder. Tyler Diaz, always eager for trouble, roared. My turn. He darted forward like an arrow, fist raised high. The crowd drew in sharp breaths, bracing for impact, but Naomi shifted her hips, stepped back smoothly, and caught his wrist mid-strike. In one swift twist, she wrenched his arm behind him. Tyler's cry split the silence as he dropped to his knees, face contorted in pain. Naomi held the lock firmly, but without cruelty enough to show resistance was useless. After a few seconds, she released him. Tyler collapsed forward, clutching his arm, eyes burning red with pain and shame. Shock rippled through the crowd. Phones trembled in raised hands. Whispers burst forth. Naomi just dropped Brandon. She locked Tyler too. Unbelievable, she made it look easy. Savannah froze, her face stiff. The arrogant smile evaporated, replaced by a fear she struggled to hide. Brandon growled, pushing to rise again. But when Naomi's calm, cutting gaze swept over him, something unseen pressed down. He stopped, muscles tense, but didn't move closer. Savannah's hands trembled, though she forced herself to look composed. She couldn't let the school see her shaken. In desperation, she shouted, her voice cracking beneath the bravado. Don't think this is over, Naomi. You think you're special. You'll still bow to me, the crowd murmured, but no laughter followed. Many eyes flicked toward Savannah with doubt. Behind her, Tessa and Jenna exchanged uneasy glances. Naomi took one measured step forward, her voice low yet clear. I warned you, you shouldn't continue. The air froze. Savannah recoiled a half step before forcing her chin high again, clinging to her mask of arrogance. But she knew deep down this game was slipping beyond her control. Brandon, her strongest shield, had fallen in seconds. Tyler, the reckless agitator, was on his knees, and Naomi, standing calm, compact, and unflinching, seemed to anticipate every move before it came. That scared Savannah more than any blow could. The crowd no longer roared. Instead, silence thickened, broken only by sharp breaths. Eyes turned toward Naomi with something new, respect. For the first time, Maplewood High saw someone strong enough to face Savannah without flinching. Naomi inhaled deeply, keeping her pulse steady. Her father's words echoed, "Don't start it, but finish it." She knew this wasn't over. Savannah wouldn't stop here, but Naomi was ready, and the whole school had seen the truth. Savannah bit her lip, feeling the shell of her power cracking. Never before had she felt so alone, even while standing at the center of a crowd. In that instant, Savannah realized she wasn't just facing Naomi, she was facing the truth itself. False power can't stand against real courage and control. The air behind Maplewood High felt frozen. Brandon Reed was still panting on the grass, Tyler Diaz clutching his aching arm, while Naomi Brooks stood tall, her gaze steady and calm. The crowd of students did not cheer, did not jeer. They simply watched in silence. Everyone knew they were witnessing the unthinkable, the Queen Savannah Reed, losing her grip on power before their very eyes. Savannah stiffened her hands, trembling slightly. She couldn't accept this image, the whole school silent, their stares no longer admiring but filled with doubt. Her pale face twisted as she bit her lip, then suddenly screamed, trying to drown the fear rising inside her. "You think you've won, Naomi." Naomi didn't answer. She only stared back, eyes cold, yet unshaken. That silence unsettled Savannah more than any words could. In a moment of lost control, Savannah shrieked and hurled herself at Naomi. No more calculations, no regal composure, only an 18-year-old girl driven by anger and fear. She swung her arm, aiming a stinging slap, and tried to shove Naomi to the ground before the entire crowd. But Naomi had been trained too well by her father to be caught off guard. Her body turned instinctively, hand snapping out to seize Savannah's wrist and tug just enough to unbalance her. Savannah stumbled, her whole body tilting forward. The crowd collectively held its breath. In a heartbeat, Naomi could have let go, could have allowed Savannah to sprawl face first into the grass, humiliated before everyone. Instead, Naomi steadied her, pulling her upright just enough for Savannah to feel her helplessness. Naomi leaned in, voice low but resonant enough for the circle to hear, "You were never strong, Savannah. And you will never control me." Savannah froze. The words cut deep, slicing into the core of her pride. Her eyes widened, lips quivered, and a wave of humiliation surged within her. Naomi released her. Savannah staggered backward, nearly falling again. The yard was silent. Brandon didn't step forward. Tessa and Jenna stood rigid. Tyler stared at the ground, mute. Savannah looked around desperately, but all she found were indifferent or pitying eyes. No cheers, no chants, no loyalty. Only the harsh truth the power she had built so carefully had shattered in minutes. Naomi drew in a slow breath, her expression unchanged. She knew it was over. The murmurs spread, not about Naomi as an outsider anymore, but as something else, something new. A boy whispered, "She didn't beat Savannah down. She just proved who was truly strong." Heads nodded around the circle. Naomi's heartbeat steadied. She felt no joy, no regret. This was not a victory of fists, but of self-control. Savannah trembled, tears glinting in her eyes. She turned and fled the circle, each step heavy, every gaze behind her, stripped of respect. Tessa and Jenna trailed after, no longer shadows of devotion, but hesitant followers. Brandon lowered his head. Tyler slipped into the crowd, vanishing. Naomi lingered a moment, then turned and walked away. No one blocked her path. Students parted silently, their eyes filled with awe and respect. She left the circle, heading down the long walkway to the back gate. Whispers followed, but she didn't listen. Inside, only her father's words echoed, "You don't start it, but you must finish it, with control." Today, she had done just that. No one was badly hurt, no one sent to the hospital, and most of all, she hadn't let the old fear consume her. On her walk home, the cool evening wind brushed through her hair, washing away the tension still clinging to her shoulders. Naomi knew Maplewood High would never be the same tomorrow. Savannah Reed had lost her throne, and Naomi, though she never sought it, had become the new symbol. But inside she felt no pride, only peace, because Naomi understood the greatest victory was not toppling someone before a crowd, but preserving one's self-control. And that was the lesson she would carry forever. The next morning, autumn sunlight streamed through the halls of Maplewood High, but the air was different now. Groups of students huddled together, whispering in excitement, all revolving around one subject, the showdown behind the gym the day before. Naomi Brooks entered the school with her usual calm stride, backpack slung over her shoulders, hair tied neatly. Her face showed no hint of pride, yet she could feel every gaze fixed on her. No longer were there mocking laughs as on her first days, only curiosity mixed with admiration. A few students nodded as she passed. Some offered faint smiles, others leaned to whisper to friends, "That's Naomi." She really took down Brandon and Tyler. Naomi gave only a slight nod before moving on. She knew she had unwillingly become the center of attention she never sought. At the end of the hallway, Savannah Reed appeared, but she was no longer the queen of Maplewood. The proud gait was gone. Her steps were slow, shoulders sagging, eyes fixed on the floor as if straining beneath the weight of hundreds of stairs. Tessa and Jenna walked behind her, but at a distance, no longer shadowing her every move. Brandon, Savannah's brother, lingered in the corner, his eyes avoiding contact. Tyler was nowhere to be seen, too ashamed to show his face. Savannah heard the whispers clearly. She really lost to Naomi. Never thought I'd see Savannah read like this. Each word cut like a blade. She clenched her fists but couldn't lift her head. Naomi saw it all. For a fleeting moment she remembered Chicago, when she herself had been shunned after the incident years ago. That feeling of loneliness of the world turning its back, Naomi knew it well. And now Savannah was the one enduring it. But Naomi felt no satisfaction. Instead, a quiet sympathy rose in her chest. She knew losing people's respect could hurt far more than any physical blow. At lunch, the cafeteria scene made the shift clearer. Naomi sat at her usual corner, but all eyes turned to another table, the center one, Savannah's throne. Now it stood painfully empty. Savannah sat alone, tray before her, no one daring to approach. The laughter and chatter filled other tables, but an invisible circle of silence surrounded hers. The power she once held had evaporated, leaving only isolation and wary stares. Naomi looked up, her heart sinking at the sight. After a moment's hesitation, Naomi stood tray in hand and walked toward Savannah's empty table. The cafeteria fell silent instantly. Every eye followed her steps. Savannah looked up, eyes widening in shock. Naomi set her tray down and sat opposite. Her voice was calm but clear enough for all to hear. "It's over, Savannah. I don't want to continue this pointless game." "I hope you don't either." Savannah froze. The words carried no triumph, no arrogance. They sounded final but also offered a way out. The cafeteria stayed silent. No laughter, no jeers, just watchful eyes. Some students looked at Naomi with newfound respect. Others looked at Savannah with pity. Naomi didn't say more. She rose, carried her tray back to her corner, her steps firm and straight. The crowd followed her with their eyes, then began to murmur. But this time the whispers were about Naomi's composure, her dignity, and her compassion. Savannah remained heart in turmoil. Tears welled at the corners of her eyes, but she forced them down. She knew in that moment she was no longer Maplewood's ruler. The image of the queen had shattered, and Naomi, unwilling though she was, had become the new symbol. Savannah gripped her spoon tightly, trying to hold her back straight, but her hands still trembled. She knew she had lost everything. Naomi returned to her corner, finishing her meal in silence. Yet she understood that from this day forward Maplewood High would never be the same. The order built on fear had collapsed. A new chapter had begun, and she, though reluctant, had become its center. Naomi drew a deep breath. She never sought power, never wanted to be an icon, but she knew one truth: true strength lay in holding firm to yourself, never letting anyone else control you. And that was the lesson the whole school had seen. The next morning, Savannah Reed walked into Maplewood High with sunken eyes from a sleepless night. Every step down the familiar hallway weighed heavily on her chest. Once she had walked here like a queen, basking in the school's devotion, but now it was different. The stares that met her carried no fear, only pity or distance. Savannah tried to keep her back straight, but her hand trembled as she opened her locker. The whispers around her pierced like knives. She really lost to Naomi, from queen to outcast in just one day. Savannah swallowed hard, pretending not to hear, though her heart felt crushed. From the other side of the hall, Naomi Brooks entered. Her face was calm, no smile, no pride. But the atmosphere around her had shifted entirely. Students who once ignored her now nodded in greeting. A few offered respectful smiles. A younger boy stared at her and whispered to a friend, "She wasn't afraid of Savannah. She's really strong." Naomi heard it but remained silent, walking on. She didn't want to be the center of attention, yet she knew she couldn't escape it. In class, Savannah tried to focus on the board, but her vision blurred. Tessa and Jenna sat apart, no longer leaning in with hushed jokes. When the teacher asked questions, no one looked to Savannah for answers. She realized she had lost her place as leader, even in the smallest ways. Naomi sat at the back, eyes fixed on her notebook. She sensed the shift, but felt no joy. Inside, she only felt a weight. She knew too well what it was like to be turned away from by the entire world. At lunch, the contrast grew sharper. Savannah walked into the cafeteria, but the once coveted center table sat empty. Brandon chose another corner with his football teammates, their conversation dull and detached. Tyler kept himself hidden, unwilling to draw attention. Tessa and Jenna laughed with new groups, their loyalty already dissolved. Savannah set her tray on the empty table, her eyes rimmed red. Laughter filled the room, but none of it belonged to her. An invisible wall of silence pressed around her seat. From across the room, Naomi saw. She bit her lip, a flicker of sympathy passing through her eyes. But then she returned to her own tray. She knew Savannah was paying the price for her own choices. That afternoon in the courtyard, small groups whispered about Naomi. A blonde girl murmured, "I think Naomi isn't just strong. She's kind too. Yesterday she could have humiliated Savannah, but she didn't. She just ended it." A boy nodded, adding, "Exactly. She's not chasing power. That's why people respect her." The whispers spread slowly, shaping Naomi into a new symbol at Maplewood High. No one called her queen, but everyone understood. She embodied courage and control in a way they had never seen before. Savannah, standing alone by the parking lot, heard it all. Her grip tightened on her steering wheel, lips trembling. The fragments of her power scattered before her eyes. Fear turned to bitterness, then to emptiness. She realized everything she once had was built on the fear of others, and once that fear vanished, she had nothing left. Her vision blurred with tears. In a fleeting moment, she saw Naomi walking past her steps, steady, her gaze untouched by the world's noise. The sight made Savannah's chest ache with a grief she had never known. That evening, Naomi sat at her desk, the lamp casting a warm glow. She thought back to lunch. She didn't want Savannah to suffer isolation, yet she knew she couldn't change another person's choices. Her father's words returned. Real power isn't about ruling over others, but about ruling yourself. Naomi gave a small, weary smile. She didn't want to be Maplewood's new queen. She only wanted peace, to study, to leave quietly after graduation. But she also understood sometimes strength isn't chosen. Sometimes it's forced into the light to protect herself and those who cannot protect themselves. In the quiet night, Naomi closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She knew Maplewood High would keep changing. Savannah was collapsing while she herself was being pushed into the role of a symbol. But this time, Naomi wasn't afraid, because she had learned the most important lesson. Strength doesn't lie in power, it lies in self-control. And with that, she would keep walking forward no matter what trials lay ahead. That morning, sunlight streamed through the tall glass windows of Maplewood High, painting golden streaks across the hallways. But the atmosphere was different. Since the afternoon behind the gym, the school had changed. There were no mocking laughs when a new student passed, no silent complicity in bullying. Everyone had witnessed the truth, and they could not forget it. Savannah Reed walked slowly through the corridor, her eyes vacant. The looks she received no longer held admiration, only indifference, sometimes even pity. Tessa and Jenna brushed past without a word. Brandon lingered far away, unwilling to approach. Tyler stayed hidden altogether. Savannah knew the power she once clung to had crumbled for good. Meanwhile, Naomi Brooks entered with her usual calm. No pride, no pretense, simply herself. Yet the eyes on her were different. Some students smiled, others nodded in greeting. Younger classmates looked at her openly with respect. Naomi answered with a small nod, keeping to her quiet ways. In her heart, she didn't see herself as a victor, only as someone who had chosen control instead of losing herself. At lunch that day, the cafeteria brimmed with noise. But the scene was reversed. Naomi sat at her familiar corner table, once ignored. Now small groups approached, asking softly, "Is this seat taken?" Naomi nodded, and slowly the once empty table filled. Not because they sought a replacement for Savannah, but because they wanted to be near a new kind of symbol, one of composure, self-control, and courage. Across the room, the center table that had been Savannah's throne was deserted. Savannah sat alone, staring at her tray, surrounded by chatter she no longer owned. The invisible circle around her seat was colder than silence. Naomi's eyes flicked toward her, a pang striking her chest. She remembered Chicago when isolation had suffocated her. She knew that feeling too well, but she also understood Savannah was facing the consequences of her own choices. After a pause, Naomi stood and walked toward the empty table. The cafeteria hushed instantly. Savannah looked up, panic flickering in her eyes. Naomi set down her tray, her voice calm but carrying clearly, "It's over. I don't want to keep fighting. I hope you don't either." Savannah froze. The words carried no arrogance, no gloating. They were a clean break, yet also an opening. Her body trembled, but she didn't reply. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she turned her face away. Naomi quietly returned to her table. The cafeteria buzzed again, not with laughter, but with murmurs of admiration. Naomi wanted no throne, no title of queen. She only wanted a simple kind of respect, one not born from fear. In the days that followed, Maplewood High transformed. Bullying all but vanished. Students once too afraid to speak began to rise. A thin boy, once mocked by Savannah's group, joined the basketball team with new confidence. A shy girl, long labeled weird, raised her hand to answer in class. Naomi never stood as leader, but her actions sparked something deeper, a quiet wave of bravery, self-worth, and protection of what was right. Savannah grew quieter. No longer the ruler of the hallways, she simply existed. Each day taught her a new truth. Power built on fear is fragile, but respect earned honestly endures. Sometimes her eyes met Naomi's across the hall. In those brief moments, Savannah seemed to understand Naomi was no longer her enemy, but someone she might learn from. Yet her old pride kept her silent. At home, Naomi sat with her father, Marcus Brooks. She told him everything. When she finished, Marcus smiled, resting a steady hand on her shoulder. "I'm proud of you. You won in the truest way possible." Naomi nodded, whispering, "I just wanted peace for myself and for others too." Marcus looked at her with quiet conviction. He knew she had not only risen beyond her past in Chicago, but had become living proof that true strength was self-control. The story of Naomi spread through Maplewood High not as gossip, but as a lesson. Students told one another she didn't fight to humiliate anyone. She stood tall so no one could strip her dignity away. From then on, Maplewood High was never the same, because they had all learned that real strength isn't in defeating others, but in holding true to yourself. And Naomi Brooks, though she never sought it, left behind a legacy that would not fade. Thus, the story of Naomi Brooks at Maplewood High comes to a close, from the silent girl stepping into a new school to the one who stood tall, never allowing anyone to strip away her dignity. If this story touched you, please hit like so that more people can find it. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next journeys where justice, truth, and courage always triumph over fear. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Every single comment is a source of motivation for us to keep telling stories that move hearts. While waiting for the next episode, we've already prepared a few more videos right beside this one. Trust me, you won't want to miss them. Thank you for being with us. See you in the next journey where the light of truth will continue to shine even in the darkest places.